Welcome to the Top Secret Wedding Podcast. Today's top secret tip is...
when your vendor does not have a very good attitude, lend a helping hand.
If you would like to learn more about Chandler and how to have a winning attitude, listen to this podcast. This is the Top Secret Wedding Podcast, where we share top secret tips to help you take your wedding game to the next level.
I'm Annika, and I'm a wedding coordinator, enthusiast, and venue manager for one of the best venues in Idaho.
I'm Chris, and I'm a DJ, master of ceremonies, and all-around lover of weddings.
We're on a mission to improve weddings and wedding professionals everywhere.
Chandler, we just hired on as the manager of LaBelle Lake. So I work with Chandler a lot. Hence why I've seen him in the morning and whatnot.
We're so excited to talk with him because he just has such a great attitude.
Sometimes.
Okay. All right. Okay.
Well, I'm excited to be here. So that's my good attitude starting off on this podcast.
Good.
So.
Let's see if we can change that. So
We're excited to have you here today.
we
for
are.
sure.
We are. So we want to talk about attitudes. And when I think of attitude, I think of you, right? For better, for worse.
Yeah.
So we want to talk about attitudes. But before we do that, let's give some context as to who you are. So where are you from?
I'm from Idaho Falls, Idaho. So born and raised, never left.
Wow.
So,
Exotic.
I know.
Nice and exotic.
Yeah. Better than Rexburg, though. I'll say that.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, for those who don't live here,
Yeah.
they don't get it, but that's a thing. And what's your background? How did you get into weddings?
So I started in kind of events first before weddings. And I was 7 years old. And my dad was always doing events and marketing and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And we went from doing these expos for a company to doing it for ourselves. And we opened up Pinecrest Event Center back in 2016.
So that was your family.
That was my family.
I didn't realize that was your family. Okay.
So we opened it up for 4 years, and a venue is hard to run.
Yeah. And it's a big venue.
It's huge.
It's huge.
27,000 square feet.
Yeah.
It was massive.
Big. Really big.
I know. I had to clean it every week.
It was very
Yeah.
big. I had to clean it.
And so we started with weddings there, and
Okay.
we started meeting wedding vendors and everything like that. So that's where I learned how to decorate, how to coordinate, everything like that. And that's just where I racked up my numbers.
Sure.
And I have done 337 weddings in my life
To this date.
to this day.
337.
Sunday was 337.
Oh,
I'm
man.
I'm so impressed you have that number. I'm always like, oh, I should figure out how many.
I wish I could go back and figure it out. At this point, I'm like, it's counting sand. Like, I don't.
Yeah.
I'm such a numbers person, so I always want to know how many horror movies I've seen, how many.
How many horror movies have you seen?
447.
Oh, my goodness. More than the
Wow.
weddings.
Yes.
Okay. All right.
That I can just flip on anytime.
Yeah.
That's true. That's true.
So how do you approach weddings? Is there a particular approach? Like when you start thinking about a wedding, is there any mindset that you put yourself in or? Yeah.
How can I make this day the best day ever? That's normally what I go into.
Okay.
And I want every wedding to be unique.
Okay.
So I always go in and people are like, well, I want this. And I was like, great. Let's take your vision and let's make it for you. So that's
Okay.
kind of the mindset I always go in, is let's make it unique to you so it is personalized to you. Because that's
Yeah.
what the day's about.
Well, I love that, especially because I just feel like so many times, you work with a couple and a bride and they're like, I've gone to Pinterest and this is what I want.
Right.
But at the end of the day, you don't want to just copy paste from Pinterest. You
Correct.
want to individualize it and make it their day.
Yeah. Because it's like, they're not going to be satisfied with a cookie cutter of wedding.
For sure.
It's going
Yeah.
to be like, oh, I wish I did this.
Mm-hmm.
So I always try to get to know the bride and groom a little bit and then be like, well, this is what I think. Take it with how you want it, but let's make this say unique to you.
It's kind of interesting because at every wedding, almost every wedding, like the main points are the same,
Yes.
right? There's the first dance. There's typically a father-daughter dance,
Right.
mother-son, right?
Bouquet throwing.
The bouquet, like,
Mhm.
yeah, but it's really interesting because it's the subtleties and that make that wedding unique. And I think you can only get those by getting to know the couple and having that mindset of how can we make this you, right? Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I did a wedding a few years ago. I'm sure I've mentioned this. I did a wedding a few years ago at a venue, and at the end of the night, I asked my assistant, so what'd you think? How'd it go? I think it was one of his first times with me there. And he said, it seemed like the story that you were telling and the story that the venue was telling were two different stories, because the venue was just there to serve the food.
Right.
Right. Like they were just there for the basics, like, and then clock out and go home.
Yep.
And for us, we were trying to tell their story. And so I love that you're approaching these weddings in that way. So how does your attitude, obviously you have an open attitude there. How does your attitude affect what goes into the wedding, the details? How does your attitude affect that? Some of this is obvious, but I'm going to let you speak on it.
Well, so like attitude can affect everyone. So one person can like ruin everyone in a whole group.
That's true.
And I've always had that. So when one of your vendors has an attitude, it's going to affect your whole day. It honestly is. And I've seen that where like a florist has come in and they're like, they're grumbling about something, right?
Yeah.
Then that automatically puts the bride in a bad mood, and now she's not in the right mindset for her wedding day. So I think attitude is 100% the core value of a wedding, right?
Yeah.
So I always try to go in with a good attitude to a wedding.
Sure.
Sometimes that doesn't happen because sometimes it's like, why is this happening? Like rain, for instance, you know?
Sure.
And you're like, it's ruining everything. But you just have to smile and say, we've got it taken care of. We're good, you know?
Yeah.
So attitude is everything because it can ruin everything.
Yeah, I agree. I'm going to throw an opposite idea in there, that sometimes if there's one venue that's really, or one vendor that's really bad and all the other vendors are on the same team, sometimes that binds everybody else together and they're like, we're going to make this amazing despite the florist or despite the whatever it is.
Right.
So how do you, is there anything that you do in particular that helps set up like the vendors to have a good attitude, or the clients to have a good attitude, or the guests even? Is there anything that you do in particular?
A smile.
Okay.
That I know that's so cliche, but like...
But it's like so true. There's a reason it's cliche because it's so important.
Right.
The number one thing I get is when it's like early morning, 7 a.m. and I go, good morning, everyone. And I just have a smile. People are always like, why are you so cheery? And I'm like,
It's so true.
because you have to be.
Someone's getting married today.
I know.
Yeah.
And so you just smile, and then it normally changes everyone like, oh, okay, let's go do this, you know? But it's always a smile for me, and I always like to sing good morning. That's also another thing I do.
Do you really?
I do.
I have not been present for this.
I have.
I always like sing when I walk in through the door. I had a boss once tell me, he was like, shut up. And I was like, I'm going to sing at your funeral one day. And I did sing at his funeral.
Did you really?
Yeah, he hated my singing, and I ended up singing at his funeral.
That's really funny.
Watch your words, right?
I will say, because I have witnessed you come in and singing good morning, and there are so many times where I try to have such a good attitude, but it's, it's so early.
Yeah.
I come in, I'm like, okay, we're here. And then you're like, good morning. And I'm like, all right.
And I'm so not a morning person. I thrive in the middle of the night.
That's
So it's
true.
really hard for me. So it's normally the car ride over. Because if you see me right as I get out of bed, I'd be like, what do you want? You know?
Right.
So it takes me a minute to get into that mindset.
Is there anything that you do to get into that mindset?
Not talk to anyone.
Really?
Yeah, honestly.
Yeah, just shut up. Leave me
Sometimes
alone.
when like my grandma talks to me, I'm like, I really love you, but I just need a minute.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'm not always so cheery in the morning. It takes me about 15, 20 minutes.
Okay.
But I
The shower,
yeah,
the Coke.
part of you and your Coke. I think part of what makes that such a good thing is that you are mentally preparing for the day.
Right.
I know for myself, when I am driving over to a wedding and I'm so tired and whatever, it's like I put on my happy music mix and just have a moment to myself.
Right.
And that's just your mental preparation to the day and how you're going to approach everything.
Yes, agreed.
Let me ask, what causes negative or positive attitudes? Like, let's dive into a little bit of the psychology of it. Have you thought about that at all? Like, what causes...
No, you're like, I don't know.
I want to hear the research.
The research I just am pulling out of my head right now. Honestly, it's again that negative. That negative can start by just one person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, because I know sometimes I've had brides put me in a bad mood too, where I'm trying to be as cheerful as possible, and they have absolutely ripped into me, and I'm just like tears in my eyes, and I'm like, okay, look at it next, you know? And I know that's like my main thing that can put me in a bad mood is if someone treats me with disrespect and is mean to me. you know, and I don't take offense to a lot of things, so you have to be
It's hard
real
not
with me.
to, but yeah.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm really trying here,
Yeah.
but it's like, I can't please you right now. And so I think that's what puts me in a bad mood personally.
Yeah.
But it can also, having like the best bride and groom can also put me in the best mood, even when I'm not
Yeah.
necessarily in the greatest mood, but I'm like faking it. And then I'm like, oh, they understand where I'm coming from. They know me,
Yeah.
you know, this is going to be a good wedding.
I know one thing I always like to tell my staff is one thing that can put you into a bad mood so fast is bringing your life into work.
Yes.
So I always try to tell my staff, like, obviously life happens, life is hard, things come up, but when you are going into a wedding day, whatever personal life issues you
Yeah.
have going on, leave them in your car,
Right.
leave them at the door,
They
because
don't matter.
they don't matter. And the
Yeah,
thing is
yeah.
it's so easy to bring in some, you know, emotional baggage from your life into a wedding day
All the time.
all the time. And,
Because
you
again,
know,
it's clockwork for you.
exactly. That's the thing. It just turns into
Yeah.
your job. And so it's easy to bring
Yeah.
that in. And I always tell them, like, you have to leave it at the door. And if it's something that you can't, rely on your team. Let them know, hey, like, I'm having a hard day today. I'm really trying. But, you know, and more often than not, your team is going to be there to have your back and
Yes.
support you. So,
Yes.
I'm going to throw a couple of things in there. I think, you know, two things that can really affect your mood and the client's mood is one, the expectations that are set, and two, the preparation that you put into those expectations.
I'm going to plug in Britton's quote.
Do it.
Unmet expectations lead to frustration.
It's true. It really is. And the problem is that sometimes clients will have an expectation that's like way up here and you're like physically not possible. Like this
Right.
is literally not possible to do. So managing those expectations, we have an episode about that, preparing through preparation, or protecting yourself through preparation.
Yeah.
If you're able to help manage the client's expectations and say, this is what's actually doable.
Well, it's communication. And I've had
Yeah.
that with like previous employers before. We're like, well, we expected this. I was like, well, if you had communicated that's what you expected from me, I would have told you maybe that's not realistic.
Yeah.
And let's work on realistic expectations. You know, like
Yeah.
what are our goals? What can I actually achieve? You know? And so I've had that.
Yeah. I think the opposite is true when the client's expectations are too low. Sometimes clients will come in and they'll say like, well, this is what we want. And I'm like, that's it.
Just play the music. That's all we
I'll tell them no.
Yeah.
They're like, no,
No.
that's not what I do. But I,
Just look up your iPhone.
right, exactly.
That's the point of it.
I have told clients or potential clients that. But I think that sometimes when they come in and their expectations are so low, you can increase their attitude by saying, actually, this is what we should do. This is what we can do. And sometimes they're like, oh, I never thought of that.
Yeah.
And
You don't know what you don't know.
yeah. And that really can change their attitude because now instead of just they're thinking, oh, we're just going to have a wedding. Now they're like, we are having a wedding. Like it changes their whole attitude.
Well, I worked with probably 150 bride and grooms. They don't know anything about a wedding except that they say, I do, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so it's like, well, this is normally what happens. That doesn't mean you have to do this. And you
Yeah.
just need to go through the whole day with them. And that's when I do wedding coordinating. That's what I do is I'm like, okay, have you got this? Have you got this? Have you got this? You got this? And they're like, I didn't even realize this was all involved.
Yeah.
But they don't
Yeah.
realize until the day of when they're like, something's lacking in our wedding.
Well, and that's where most times they come to you and they say, well, you're the professional. Hold my hand through this and
Yeah.
tell me what to do. I've never been married before. I don't know what I'm doing. So
Yeah. Yeah. It's kind of fun when you're able to do that.
it is.
honestly.
It is.
So let's say that you have some clients or vendor or anything, any one of the factors of people in a wedding. Is there anything that you do to help turn those attitudes around if somebody is, just not having it?
I think it's lending a helping hand. I would say is sometimes people are tired and you're like, well, let me just help you carry your stuff real quick. You know,
Yeah.
even though that's not my job, it is my job. You know what I mean?
Right. Well, I think so. Chris is the one who put this in my head, but like, if not you, then who?
Right.
And a lot of times, like, hey, I always think of bartenders for some reason because they always have all these bottles of wine and alcohol and they need to move it. And it's like, hey, well, that's not my job to set up the bar or move the alcohol. But how far does that go to just say, hey, can I help you unload those? Or can I help take all these bottles over to the bar or whatever. And, most people, they don't always come in with the best attitude, but just a little helping hand will change their whole day.
And it's like such a little thing for you, but a huge thing for them.
Exactly.
Right. The phrase that I tell my guys, my DJs is, it might not be your fault, but it is your responsibility.
Yeah.
Right.
So it might not be your fault that it rained on all the chairs just before the ceremony, but it is your responsibility to help wipe them down because, I mean, the attitude, it is a domino effect throughout the day.
Oh, yeah.
If guests show up and they sit on wet chairs at the venue, that, in my mind, is directly connected to how much they're going to dance at the end of the night.
Oh, yeah.
If they start out with a bad experience, I tell clients
wet
this.
bum.
Right.
Yeah.
If they start out with a wet bum, they're not gonna continue. And I think of it like a Netflix movie. If you start a Netflix movie and it's terrible, then you're not gonna stick around for the end.
No,
That's
it's
so true.
right?
Yeah.
I turned off so many movies. I'm like, not a vibe.
Not
You
happening.
have to catch me in the first 5 minutes.
Exactly.
I'm the
So
worst, and I just sit there, and then I get to the end, and I'm like, that was a waste of time.
that was not worth it. So I think it's really important to, take responsibility and change those things. I think another thing that helps is making people shine where they should be shining, right?
Yes.
So if you've got a photographer that's new to the area, you've never worked with them before, instead of just like, okay, you're the photographer, here's what's going to happen today. Oh, you're the photographer? Man, I stalked you on Instagram and you are killing it. Like, I just love your use of lighting instantly. Like, even if they didn't like you, now they like, how do they not like you after that?
I know. They're bums if they're not.
Yeah.
It's their attitude.
I've had that happen too, right?
Yeah, it's true.
But yeah, I think it's important to make those people shine, and I love just offering that
Yes.
help.
Like,
Yeah.
it's just like a little thing, like we could grab the golf cart. It's not a huge thing for us,
Right.
but it's a huge thing for them because it's like we just had to pull the golf cart instead of them carrying everything.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and even you can simplify it even more and just genuinely, again, you always have to be genuine. But going up to someone and saying, oh, I really love your top. That's so cute. Or,
Yes.
just whatever, even just a little
Yes.
compliment. You might be at this wedding wearing all black, sweating. Nobody knows you're sweating though because black hides it.
I know. That's why I wear it all the time.
But, they might just feel like, oh, I feel so frumpy. I'm so tired. But if someone comes up and says like, you look really nice, that's just going to change their attitude. They're going to be like, oh, that's so nice.
The weight of my heart is complimenting my shoes, so I totally get that.
But you do have good shoes.
I do.
You make it easy.
91 pairs.
Shut
You
up,
have
really?
91 pairs.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's
Oh my
impressive.
goodness.
Okay.
My shoes.
Yeah. Well, I have to compliment you on your attitude. Your attitude is always so positive and it's infectious in a good way.
Yeah.
In a good way.
Not like COVID.
Well,
but
don't ask my family. Oh, they'll tell you something different. My professional attitude is great.
I'll take that. Yeah. I think it's so important to have such a positive attitude. And I love when I'm working wedding with you because I know like that I can be as positive as I want and you're right there to match it.
Oh, and the same goes for you. You're my absolute favorite. So
geez,
I've worked with a
shucks.
lot of DJs, and it was not till LaBelle till I actually worked with you doing the 300 plus weddings.
This is true. Yeah.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Should we do some rapid fire questions?
Let's do it.
Okay, so we're going to rapid fire questions at you. And there's no wrong answers. Well, maybe there would be. I don't know. But just answer whatever you think.
No wrong, no right answers.
Right.
What's your favorite candy?
Ooh, Kit Kat.
Oh, that's
Good
good.
choice. Good choice.
Kat.
Favorite color.
Red.
Favorite holiday?
Christmas.
Favorite wedding trend. Yeah, that's a harder one.
I don't know, the trend of black and white, just no color. That is my favorite.
Classic.
That's what my wedding's going to be one day.
Favorite wedding food?
Prime rib. I know
Oh.
it's not a normal.
Oh,
No, that's
really?
a good choice though.
That's
I love a good primer.
Especially when they're like, prime rib.
yeah. Least favorite wedding song that's played at weddings.
I loved her first.
I'll go with you there.
It is the most overused.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I didn't even have to. Or
No, that's
Perfect
fair.
by Ed Sheeran.
Okay. Yeah.
That's fair.
Those
That's
are my
fair.
two.
That's fair.
I didn't even have to think about that one.
Favorite season?
Fall.
Pumpkin spice. Okay.
Yeah, pumpkin spice. I've never had pumpkin spice.
Really?
What?
It's good.
That shocks me.
Good.
I know.
It's good.
We're going to go get it this year.
Good. Good. Well, we really appreciate you on our being on our podcast. This is so much fun.
Thank you for having me.
Anytime I get to hang out with you, I'm all about it. So, okay. Well,
Yeah, thanks for listening.
yep. We'll see you next time. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Top Secret Wedding Podcast.
Subscribe, rate, and review us, and we'll see you next time.